noise in here. Hey, welcome to Fish on Northwest. Dwayne England and the crew back in studio once again. Kelly Barnum, Tommy Edson, of course, over there in the corner is IT David, doing his thing and doing a fantastic job. Once again, we'll be joined later in the kitchen by Chef Kelly Lance O'Neill and his wonderful assistant Sherry for the recipe of the week. You know, I didn't even ask them what they're cooking tonight, so I guess we'll have to check it out later on.
I'm sure it's delicious.
I'm sure it will be fantastic. Quick reminder, Fish Up Northwest is presented by Better Homes and Gardens Pacific Commons, located in Puyallup, Washington, and we thank them for that. And to add to that, we actually have a couple new sponsors on board, boys, that I want to mention this evening. Sterl Ink, Screen and Prints Embroidery. We're actually going to get some wares done here in the near future. Cool. Looking at some hoodies and some t-shirts and some hats with some really badass patches and stuff. They do, Derek over there does some really great work. So we welcome them on board as a sponsor. Check out their stuff at sterlinkprints.com, and we will have stuff to display here shortly that we will proudly wear and, of course, sell, because this isn't, we just don't give everything away around here. We'd all go broke, okay? Also, we want to welcome Metal Supermarkets. This is a great company for guys in our industry of fishing and hunting, and whether you got to repair a trailer or you are building a boat or fabricating anything for crying out loud, hauling your RVs around or whatever it is. If you need certain types of metals that you can't find, you need to look up at www.metalsupermarkets.com. They have an incredible lineup of inventory, and if they don't have it, they can get it for you. They are fantastic at finding the metals that you need. www.metalsupermarkets.com. We welcome Metal Supermarkets as a contributing sponsor here at FHN. With that, we are live streaming once again, guys, YouTube and Facebook this evening, right? So whether you're joining us on Facebook or YouTube, we thank you. Be sure afterwards, maybe if you're watching us tonight on Facebook, jump over to our YouTube page, give us a subscribe, just so you never miss an episode. And you can check out all the other videos that we're posting up there, a lot of how-tos and breaking out the cooking segments and the how-to stuff in the Bay Lab. We're going to bring that stuff to you each and every week, so it's fresh content. So check us out on our YouTube page. Join us each week during the week when we're not on the air. We want to bring you stuff as much as we can, keep you informed. That is happening on our Facebook page. Once again, you guys are doing a great job loading up content. The interaction between you, our guests following us, and the conversations we're having there, a lot of this political stuff that's going on, whether it's fishing or hunting or whatever facet, but we have a lot of insightful conversations there with folks. They're very interested as to what is happening. A lot of it at the government level trickles over into WDFW, ODFNW, Idaho Fish and Game. We're trying to keep on top of all that stuff, but it's not just all about the politics. We want your photos. We want your game photos. We want your fish photos. We want your family photos. We want your stories. We want your recipes. Whatever you want to share with us on our Facebook page that we can share out to everybody else, please join us on our Facebook page at Fish Hunt NW. Check us out there, and of course follow us over on Instagram too. We're posting stuff up there daily. Lots of ways to find the content we're providing, and we want to be involved with you folks as much as you're involved with us. So keep it going. The social media stuff is working, it's branching out. Matter of fact, the video that I posted up, we have Dave Champ in as our guest tonight. He's representing Hatchery and Wild Coexist. We're going to delineate between Hatchery and Wild versus Hatchery versus Wild, which is another slogan for another group that we're not too particularly fond of. Right. But we're going to make sure we all understand it is Hatchery and Wild Coexist. Dave Champ is joining us later in studio tonight. We're going to have several conversations with him, once again to help educate actually to what is going on in the realm of hatchery and wild fish coexisting in our rivers. and some very good science that's come out the last 10 years or so, Barnum.
Right. I mean, I really feel like a lot of the science has been cherry picked by some of these, special interest groups.
Yep.
And it's nice to see the whole realm of science, and science that fits more as a sportsman and as a fisherman, our common sense that when we see these things, we have this common thought and we go, that science doesn't seem to match up with what I believe. Yeah. So it's nice to see that.
We're going to dispel some of the myths. We're going to educate you on the facts, quite frankly. And so we're going to get some very good information on that. But my point was, I guess before I got off tangent here, the video I shared that they actually produced that documentary. It's a 28-minute documentary, and if you haven't seen it, it's on our Facebook page. So go there and watch it. 28 minutes of your life that you will be glad you did. It opens your eyes. The folks that were involved in this just a little over 5 years ago, compiling this information. You're talking to coastal guides out here in Washington Forks area, persons throughout Washington and Oregon, collectively coming together with really good information data, fisheries biologists, managers, tribal representatives. I mean, it was a large group of folks. The information's compelling. That video's been up on our Facebook page for just 2 days, not even quite 2 full days right now. It's been seen over 7,000 times. So that tells me you folks are interested as to what's going on. And we're going to help you walk through the weeds of this stuff tonight as we get Dave in here later on in the show. Okay, let's move forward with a few other things. I talked about Area 11 last week, how it was fishing fairly well. I talked to Art Tashel. By the way, Art's going to be on the show with us later via phone call. He is down in California. He's involved with the PFMC down there for North of Falcon process. So he's down there for the week in meetings. He's going to take time out this evening, probably sitting in his hotel room, hopefully enjoying a cool Orca beer by chance. And he's going to join us later in the show. We're going to talk about the net pen programs going on down Area 11. So, but as far as fishing, I said, actually, after I got done talking to him last night, he goes, "Hey, did you want to report before I get off the phone?" I said, "Absolutely." He goes, "Well, get down here." That's like right now, I'm at work. He says, "Get down here, man. The troll fishery, the trollers have been just lights out this week. Last week, if you remember, we gave a report of Area 11. Area 9 still fishing very well. There's a few weeks left on that, but Area 11 is on fire as far as the troll fishery goes between Claybanks and the marina. 160 to 190 foot of water, 10 feet off the bottom, typical blackmouth, banging bottom, hoochies, spoons, whatever you're throwing at them. Put some scent on there, use some Mike's herring scent. Definitely going to get it done.
Right.
Troll speed, people, they're always asking about troll speed. 2 miles per hour on average. Make sure you're going the right direction against or with the tide, depending if you're just treading water or actually covering ground.
Right.
Yeah. 2 to 2.5 is going to get it done. Make sure you're fishing that incoming tide. Look for those softer incoming tides. Find that bait. Get out there and troll Area 11. You're going to find yourself some nice blackmouth. Yeah, that's what's going on down there.
A little update on that. WDFW did announce this week that Area 9 closes April 15th. So make sure you guys are on top of that.
That is the 15th. I said a couple weeks. Yeah, we are. What is today? The 11th. So you got 4 days left there. Once that dries up, just move yourself on down south a little bit. Get to that Area 11 and give that a go.
Good thing about that winter fishery down there, man, is you don't have the dogfish. Right? You can run bait. You can run all the scent you want. I'm real skeptical about running scent out there in the summertime because you just deal with so many dogfish.
A lot of dogs in the summer. But it's a good point, Tommy. This time of year, you're going to get away with being able to run that bait, and it's definitely going to produce for you. Being a bait guide, I would choose that over anything else any day. With that, hey, Tommy, the other day, yesterday, a matter of fact, if I think, right? The commission settled on its hunting regulations. Some of the new rules they're putting in place going into 2019 hunting season. Some of those are highlighted. What's a few of the ones that we need to be aware of as we roll into this year's hunting season?
Well, like kind of what we touched on in the last couple weeks, certain parts of eastern Washington are I feel like are having a hard winter, and this is what we're kind of angling towards is some tags being cut. It looks like. Eastern Washington, they're eliminating antlerless seasons in eastern Washington to conserve populations. That's kind of just reflecting of the hard winter, particularly February. March was kind of rough over there. there's reduced number of antlerless elk permits in southeast Washington, down there in the same area as we talked about hunting shed, or where the shed areas are closed. And that's just to kind of, they're going to hold off and wait and see what numbers look like before they release, game regs and stuff like that. But I think they're just kind of preparing people for what's to come.
Some areas received as high as a 40% mortality rate.
Yeah, and it's good. It's good too for people to know. It's typically not your adult animals. It's your your adolescent animals, and what they typically look at is like how many fawns, how many
it's year class
made it through year class.
It's year class. I mean, just like fish, it's year class.
Almost use the word escapement.
Kelly, I mean, you know that for sure, especially with your elk numbers down there.
Yeah.
But hard winters are hard on the young ones for sure. Survivability could be minimal, so they're not just going to open it up and say, hey, we're just going to issue as many doe tags or cow tags as we have historically, because they really don't know accurately what the numbers currently are.
Right.
So we got to preserve those does and cows.
I mean, as a whitetail hunter, Northeast Washington area whitetail hunter, I mean, we've been saying for the last 3 or 4 seasons that deer numbers are down.
Yeah.
And so we kind of expected this. Winter kill, predation, whatever's causing it. Unfortunately, we are the ones that have to deal with the shorter seasons and less antlerless harvest and stuff like that. But as sportsmen, it's welcomed. I mean, we got to keep the populations up where we feel like, wow, I'm seeing a lot of deer.
Yeah.
And when you go out and you don't feel like you're seeing a lot of deer, you begin to get frustrated.
Yeah.
And it's important that we stay successful.
Sure. We have to make those choices when it comes. It's called game management, not just game harvest. So we have to be cognizant of what the numbers show. And guys will throw rocks at WDFW and say, oh, they want more money, and now they're not even going to let us go kill a doe. Well, if that region is down on numbers, you're not going to be able to kill a doe for a year or two.
This is kind of status quo for other states too. This is the first thing you see in Montana and Idaho is antlerless and cow tags cut before, anything when it's a precursor. A couple other interesting things that are going on, both of which I kind of like, is minimum arrow weight restrictions. They're kind of doing away with. And you and I, Barnum, talked about this before the show. I bounced it out. You're the big bow owner.
Right. I feel like, and I don't know this for sure, I feel like maybe that's being adjusted one of 2 reasons, just to make regulation easier. Maybe. I mean, I've never had a game warden pull out a scale and weigh my arrows. No. Maybe some of them do. I haven't seen it, but I think this is probably more of a turn for the youth hunters and for the women archers now to shoot the lighter bows and to shoot a lighter arrow. Yeah. There's not a lot of benefit, at least the way I see it, in shooting a lighter arrow. You might pick up a little bit of speed and a little flatter trajectory, but the kinetic energy of that heavier arrow is what's going to give you your penetration in an animal.
Agreed.
So I think that's a good move.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I think you're probably right. It's curtailed towards ladies and youth. Yeah. And if that encourages more people to take up hunting, then it's a step in the right direction. Yeah. So you can't discount them for that. So anything else going on?
Another good thing that I'm really excited about is they're expanding the whole requirement about the hoof rot thing, leaving your hooves in the woods. They're expanding that statewide. Right. I like that because it's proactive.
Why don't they put that on a T-shirt? Leave your hooves in the woods.
Hooves in the woods.
I mean, seriously. Somebody print me up a T-shirt.
Somebody make a T-shirt.
Somebody, Sterling's, Derek, give me a shirt. Shows a couple of pile of hooves laying around.
Yeah, pile of hooves in the woods.
And an animal standing there at his knees, looks like he's sunk in the mud. Yeah. And somebody took it and removed his hooves, right? So
I like it because it's proactive, man.
Yeah, I like that it's statewide now, because I still see a lot of pictures on Facebook, Instagram, and that of guys in their garage with elk hanging or whatever. I still see the hooves, and it's like,
I've seen that too.
It's just make it statewide. That way everybody's doing it, so that it's easier to follow.
Well, it doesn't matter which area you go hunt in. Right. You know that the rule is applicable and it's easier to track, right?
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Easier for game wardens to enforce. Because it's the expectation everywhere.
Absolutely.
There's no question. So, all right, I like that one too. Yeah. So that sounds like a couple of rule changes that the commission implemented that is probably going to be or weigh in favorably with a lot of guys. Unless you're just a die-hard, got to have my doe hunt because I never get my buck, you might have a bad year. Sorry. It's just the way it is. So,
I mean, that affects all of us.
It is.
I like to harvest does also. I mean, I have no problem with it. And it's going to affect us, I'm sure.
Oh, well.
So, we'll
see. They'll bounce back. Last week, I had it here on the old desk, and I wanted to bring it up because it's another point of contention that kind of pissed me off a little bit as I read through the articles and did a little digging, as you did as well, Barnum. Wild Fish Conservancy's at it again. They're actually suing the feds. They have the audacity to say, our balls are so big, we're going to go sue the feds because we can. We have all this out-of-state money. This one report I read is based out of Arizona. for God's sakes, right? And let me see if I don't know if I gave that to you or not. I think
Right,
I did.
I have it. I have it. So one of the groups, yes, is actually based out of Arizona, and that is what is the name of that group? I don't see it on here. Anyway, it's a Wild Fish Conservancy teamed up with the CBD. And they're suing the National Marine Fisheries Service.
Yeah, NOAA.
Basically saying that your salmon harvests are not gonna benefit the orca recovery.
Correct.
So again, our favorite group, the Wild Fish Conservancy, goes after attacking the harvest, doesn't talk about predation, doesn't talk about, environmental impacts, just going to focus it right on the sport fishermen and the commercial fishermen and say it's harvest.
So we all know that they are extremely anti-hatchery, right? They don't want any hatchery fish. All the lawsuits previously, they've been slapped against WDFW, ODF&W, in the realm of steelhead fisheries, where we had seasons where they couldn't plant steelhead until they completed their information and allowed NOAA to give them their permits so they could go ahead and plant. We had a couple of those years up north where those fish were dumped into the lakes. The Wild Fish Conservancy is all about no hatcheries, and you know what? We don't even want you fishing. Right. At the end of the day, I mean, that's what they're saying. We don't want you fishing. So now they come with this lawsuit, and as you mentioned, they're saying you are not doing enough to save the orcas, so you need to pull the fleet off the water. You need to do away with recreational fishing, and we're going to slap a lawsuit against you until you do so. In reading into the reports, and obviously we're right now in the middle or towards the latter part of North of Falcon process.
Right, which is, it's really funny that this lawsuit drops right as the meetings are happening.
It's happening now.
Right.
And if you read through some of the information coming out of the meetings, the amount of food that needs to be reserved for the orcas is part of their model that they're running. In other words, they're paying attention to the extraction of XYZ numbers of fish by recreational and commercial, if it's in that type of area, and what that will do for abundance of food source for when the orcas are in that area at a particular time. Right. It's not like it's not off the table. Right. It's not like they're not having the discussions.
They're a huge part of the discussion.
Absolutely.
Huge part of it.
I don't know where they get their information, or if they have anybody that sits in those meetings, or if they just sit in Arizona and California and, with their big lawyer firms and all their money and decide, I want you to go to the I want you to go to the Wild Fish Conservancy website just to take a look. And you're going to see that a host of things that they have going on is litigation after litigation.
Yeah, so they do on the side of their website. It's just it's basically kind of their press releases.
Yeah,
it's just the announcement of litigation after litigation after litigation. And we talked about this years before. It almost has started to feel like with those guys that they're actually using litigation to be an income generator. They do the litigation, they go after WDFW, ODFW, and they use it. They don't intend to really want to go to court with it. They like to settle out of court for court costs and all these other things. Yeah. And then they'll use that money to, I guess, build up, get ready for the next litigation.
War chest. Yeah.
So
I feel like they're kind of the metaphorical bully that wants your lunch money. Right. Sorry if I'm going out on a limb and saying that, but that's just how I feel. Now, I don't know how many orcas they got in Arizona. I really don't. But
that was my question, Tommy. It's like, I'm glad they're the experts. I mean, they're apparently the orca experts, with their highfalutin educations and everything else.
So, Roadrunners.
I'll be curious to see where that goes. I'm sure the feds are kind of like, oh great, these guys are back knocking on the door again. So it's a balancing act. There's so many fingers in this thing at this point, and we're going to discuss several of them tonight with Hatchery Wild. We're going to talk about the net pen fish that are being reared and then ultimately released in Puget Sound. A lot of this is about generating fish for the future, generating fish for the orcas, generating fish for recreational.
And the net pens are such a huge... It can be such a huge way to produce salmon for the orcas and for recreational and fishermen. And it cannot, I don't see where it can have a negative impact on a native fish.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. NOAA's stamp of approval hinges on the fact of managing your strays, not allowing an abundance of hatchery fish to hit the gravel and intermix, because currently they're still under the belief that hatchery fish spawning on the gravel, producing natural spawn fish, is detrimental to the survivability of wild fish, which we're going to get into all that later with Dave. Yeah. But that's kind of where NOAA's at. I'm very curious to talk to him later, because knowing that's where NOAA's at, I'm curious how we find that balance. Yeah. we're carrying the flag to say hatchery wild coexist. Noah's saying we don't want a bunch of hatchery fish on the gravel, so we got to come to an agreement here at some point. But it's very convoluted. It gets really mixed up and very confusing for a lot of folks when Wild Fish Conservancy and other groups start slamming lawsuits and just muddying up the waters and trying to slow the process, right? So anyway, it was worth a mention. Keep eyes on that one because their lawsuit regimen is not going to go away. That is kind of their MO. All right, moving forward, let's talk about catching some fish. Hey, the Springer Run was updated, and they gave us an extension of 2 more days of Springer fishing, April 13 and 14. You know, good luck if you venture out. This rain, if we get to a weather report later today, this weather in by midweek, maybe Wednesday or Thursday, you may see a river start dropping, which would allow some guys to get some time in on that Columbia River. But you know, don't hold your breath. It's if you're below the Willamette, it's going to be filthy dirty anyway.
I don't know what the turbidity is on the Willamette right now, but I wouldn't doubt it's horrible. Run a plow through it.
Yeah.
I do have that on the weather report. If we get to it, I'll look at the Columbia River and we'll see. But I mean,
well, 2 more days.
Go fishing. You got 2 more days. Go fishing.
I always ask when they ramp up these meetings right at the end of season, and it's getting to the window, and I got the numbers here somewhere as far as you know what's left. If I can pull that up real quick, let me see here. I might have gave it to you, Barnum.
No.
Oh, here we go. So we are at 45% of the run. We're at. We still have a little over 2,000 fish remaining to go target, right? And they're giving us 2 days. If they know that, what's the harm of leaving it closed for a week or 2? Because we know as we get further into the season, closer to May, the fishing's actually going to get better. We might get past these early spring storms that are bouncing in here. Water may drop. Over on that Willamette, you might get it to start cleaning up a little bit. The Columbia'd fish better. How about giving us a week to 10 days of the closure, and then come back with a 2-day opener with an actual opportunity to go harvest some fish.
We would love that, but I sometimes wonder if, even though we never hear it a lot from the agencies about sportsman dollars and how we bring dollars to the community, but I wonder a lot of times if some of their decision-making process is to give you the more days because they realize the importance of those dollars to the communities.
Well, if they're going to give you the days, I would, if they say, hey, you guys want the 13th and 14th, or do you want the 20th and 21st?
But what I'm saying is we might get the 13th and 14th and only catch a couple hundred more fish, and then we might turn around and get the 20th and the 21st, and then get and extend, which was, they have done in the past. So that is a possibility.
That's a good point.
So
other than that, I want to give a quick mention. David is heading out here. You're leaving tonight, aren't you? Yeah. Oh, he spoke.
Where are you going?
Oh. Hey, something catchy Kokanee Derby. Something catchy Kokanee Derby happening. It's the annual Something Catchy Kokanee Derby over at Lake Chelan. It is this weekend, 13 and 14, oddly enough. So if you're not chasing salmon on the Columbia, you can go chase the little guys over in Chelan. This thing is well attended. Jason Williams does a fantastic job. I wanted to try and get him on the phone tonight and have a discussion, but we just don't have enough time in a 2-hour show. So if you are trying to find something to do this weekend and haven't committed to anything, you still have time. Go to info@somethingcatchy.org. Okay, info@somethingcatchy.org, or give Jason Williams a call at, get your pen and paper, here you go, 509-885-6920. Give Jason a call. He'll give you all the details of how you can enter, the fees you pay to get in. There's some great prizes they give out. This thing is sponsored by a tremendous amount of companies. David, where's the money go to?
It's for the kids. It's for the kids fishing.
IT says it's for the kids, so we're good for that. All right?
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a fantastic. They do a really good job over there, and it's very well attended. Very well attended. So if you're looking for something to do, head east. Grab the wife and kids, go catch some kokanee. It's fishing very well. And you might even tangle with a couple nice Chinook.
Dude, Sam, you stole the words right out of my mouth. I know you saw Sam's pictures.
We're gonna have Sammy on next week,
dude,
and we're gonna discuss that.
Drooling over
we're gonna discuss that Chinook fishery, that freshwater Chinook fishery.
I just threw that email address, info@somethingcatchy.org, in the comments on the Facebook live stream. So if you guys need that, it's in the comments.
Oh, there you go. Well done, Barnum.
On the YouTube.
That'll be there for you to grab. Go ahead and grab it and share that out, or check it. Click on it and let's see what's going on. So, Something Catchy Kokanee Derby. It's a great event. We're going to try to fish that next year. I say that every year. But the fact that this is show number 4, We can only do so much here. We're trying to find balance, right? I'm trying to go over this damn sore throat and make it through.
You're doing well. You're doing well,
dude. I'm trying
because it was a little touch and go as of Tuesday.
Yeah.
So
herbal tea and honey.
We're all relieved.
All right. You know what? We're going to jump out for a break, and that pretty much wraps up all the news we can use. And I'm tired of talking, so I'm gonna drink down a little bit of tea, drink down a little bit of honey. We come back. We're going to be the bait lab. And we are going to actually go over a couple different options for rigging. You know, Springer fishing is going to close on the Columbia after this weekend. Maybe we get an extension, maybe we don't.
Right.
Willamette still has options, but this is the time of year I start getting excited because I'm thinking small tributary. Now, keep in mind there's not a lot of tributaries to fish, but the ones that are currently open, as we get in towards the latter part of April, first part of May, all the way through June, if it remains open, that's your go time on your tributary Springer. So I'm going to take you through a couple different ways I like to rig and prepare for bobber and bait fishing for Springers, tributary style. We come back right here on FHM.
Come out to break the night, the pink skies waving goodbye. She come out to break the night, leaving no traces around. She's trying to free a reckless heart. She's trying to be as light as the breeze. Queen of art, Friday morning. The queen of art, Friday morning. She come out to break the night. As sweet as always. You come out to break the night, you'll be wearing her charm so frail. Yeah, she's trying to avoid everyone. Even the battle for peace. The queen of art, Friday morning. The queen of art, Friday morning.
Hey, welcome back to Fish Out Northwest. We are now back in the bait lab. We are going to talk a little bit of tributary springer fishing. This is literally one of my favorite times of the year, albeit this year we have a pretty lackluster preseason forecast and we have very few tributaries open. That being said, there are a couple of them and we need to take advantage of that. So one of my favorite ways to go about it, especially if I plan to leave the pontoon or the drift boat at home, is I'm just going to simply go bank fishing and bounce from hole to hole and try to find those areas where those fish might hold up. Now, we could get into a lot of details on water levels and clarity and where you're going to find those fish, but for the most part, I'm going to give you generalities on how to rig, at least how I like to rig, so that you can, oh, that's a good point there, Dave. Wait, I should probably turn some lights on. So while he fumbles with the lights, we're going to continue to stamp on through this. So bobber and bait fishing for springers is a great approach in that these things, though they can be finicky, you can entice them to bite. And with good bait, eggs in combination with shrimp, and of course, I didn't line it up out here, but I use a host of scents. I will have 5 or 6 different Atlas Mike scents with me, and we're talking sardine oil, sand shrimp oil, tuna is a definite go-to, herring, and mackerel. There's a number of different oily based scents that you really want to use on your baits that are going to make a difference. So having good bait is important. Having good fresh sand shrimp is important, and don't be afraid to use a decent sized glob of eggs with a good half a sand shrimp or so. Really put a lot of scent. Now I always advocate, if you have a tray of eggs, that you don't take a single scent and just simply squeeze that oil all over your eggs, okay? You want to take it, believe it or not, it's very methodical in your approach. Cut off a piece of egg, put it in your egg loop, put in a piece of shrimp, add a couple drops of whatever scent you're choosing to utilize. That way, that particular bait that you're fishing has a certain type of scent to it. The next bait that you put on, you may put a sand shrimp on with it, and you may grab your tuna oil, or you may grab your herring oil. My point is, you never want to just show up with a single scent covering your bait, or just one recipe of eggs and sand shrimp and think you're going to be successful as springers. You could knock the heck out of them on one day with a certain combination. Go back the next day, they don't even want to touch it. They don't even give it a sniff, and you have fish rolling in the hole. So always set yourself up for success. Spend a few extra bucks. Bring 2 or 3, 4 different types of oil scent with you that you can put on your bait. Okay, with that, we're talking about floats. We're talking about single hook, dual hook. Do I use monofilament? Do I use braid? The bottom line is, for me, when it comes to Chinook fishing, typically now for fall Chinook, I like to use something like this Lamiglas G1000. It's a 10.5 foot rod, 10 to 20. Now 10 to 20 rod actually is a little heavy in some cases for springers, although it's not overkill. I could fish this rod all day very comfortably, and I know that I can really put some pressure to these fish and get them in. Nothing wrong with a 10.5 foot, 10 to 20. I'll fish it all day, but I can go a little lighter, and I'm going to talk about these other rods here in a minute. Standard rigging for me on my Chinook fishing. Okay, so we've made that clear. We got a 10.5 foot rod. I like a bait caster setup. That reel just happens to have about a 22 to 25 pound drag, so that's a good thing to have for Chinook because these are big, strong fish. Because I'm fishing a bait caster, I go with a braid that is at least 40 or 50 pound on my braid. And those that have heard me give this spiel before, more so because if I do get hung up and I pull and break off, it likes to bury that braided line down into your spool. If you have a 30 pound braid on there, I guarantee it's going to bury that stuff down into that spool relatively deep. It's going to be hard to get it out of there. So I like the durability, the abrasion resistance, castability, the floatability, all those things have a larger diameter, and I like the way it stays out of the spool when I do get hung up. So 40 or 50 pound braid is what I spool up with. I'll put on about a 20 pound, depending on time of year, water clarity and whatnot. I always fish a monofilament top shot tied to my braid, and I will run that 12 to 18 feet, which is easy because it's simply arm lengths, okay? So I'll go 3 arm lengths, 18 feet or so of monofilament, knotted onto my braid. That is my travel line for where my float goes. I'm going to use that monofilament as my line that goes down in the water. In my mind, the braid floats on top. From the stopper of your float down underneath your float is monofilament, and it's going to sink, okay? You don't necessarily need to use fluorocarbon. Fluorocarbon's a little heavier. it definitely sinks, but we don't need to go to fluorocarbon unless we get into that June time conditions, extremely clear, fish are very finicky or there's not many of them around, and you're trying to be uber stealthy. And then you're going to want to bump that up to 20, 25 pound fluorocarbon just for the abrasive resistance, and that is going to be a durable line that fishes well. If you have to go to fluorocarbon, I always go a little heavier. If I'm fishing monofilament as my top shot for springers, I might get away with a 15 pound ultra green, for example, because that's a very tough line. It's going to be durable. It's going to fish well. They really can't see it unless that water gets gin clear and we're talking warmer conditions in June. Okay, something to think about. So we put that top shot on. Now, as far as the rigging goes, here's our bobber stop. If you can barely see that, it's quite small. It's a Bomag egg rubber stop. Love these things. They grab really well on monofilament. That is my depth setter for my sliding float. So on top of my float, I put an indicator corky or a bead or a fish pill, something that just helps me identify when this float is in the water and it slides all the way through the line to the stopper. I know that that float is at the very maximum of my adjustment because it is, I can see that the bead has stopped on top of my float. It's just an easier way. If you have a little distance, you're looking out across the water, you'll see that that is stopped against the stopper for sure, and you know that you're fishing the depth that you've set that at. So I got my stopper, I have my bead or my, I like to use that larger indicator, something I can see. These old eyes, of course. This is a 3/4 ounce float, and that just simply continues to go down here on my main line. I put a bead underneath that main line. I also will put a rubber bobber stop just below that bottom bead, right above the knot of my inline weight. Now the reason for that, two reasons actually. One, if I do hang up my leader and break off, typically if for some reason this knot decides to fail on the top end, if this knot on my main line decides to fail, more times than not, I'm not going to lose that float because it'll stop against this extra egg stop. Now, yeah, you're burning an extra egg stop to get that done, but it's a lot cheaper investment on that egg stop against your inline weight than giving up a $7 float. So I put that right down against the knot. That bead comes down and stops against the bobber stop, and the float, of course, would simply come down and rest against this. So when I'm casting, everything is down at the bottom end, okay? And I reel up the main line as far as I need to. That upper bobber stop passes through the guides. It's not an issue. And that's how we set our depth. The top one stops the travel, and that is how we set our depth. The other thing you could do if you wanted to, for whatever reason, you wanted to fish a fixed float, I could literally side this bottom one up to just underneath that float. Now, that float is fixed on my main line. By having a stopper on each end, that is not going to travel. If I had a need or reason to fish a fixed float, I can simply do that by sliding that stopper up. Okay, they make it really easy. 3/4 ounce float, 5/8 inline, sinker, swiveled on both sides. Simply tie that in line. Again, we're fishing a vertical presentation, so when everything is vertical in the water, I like the weights to be right underneath it. I don't like to use a snap swivel or anything and, excuse me, and hang a small cannonball or, I mean, it's your preference. You can do what you want. I like everything vertical, straight up and down. That is going to go then right to my leader. Now, oftentimes we talk about a midpoint weight on our leader. We're fishing about a 20-inch to 24-inch leader, okay? The weight is above that substantially, a couple feet above my hooks. Your bait can be somewhat buoyant. You cure your eggs in salts and sugars. It can make them a little buoyant or neutral buoyant, and they can be slow to drop into the area that you're fishing. So we like to put in a midpoint weight. Now, years ago, simply crimping on a split shot or adding some type of weight to that midpoint was an option. But anymore, I simply like to take this 1/16 hollow core that I use for stick leads, and I put another bobber stop midpoint on my leader. In most rules and regulations, if you look, your weight has to be 12 inches away from your hooks. Okay, so I make sure we're a good 12, 14 inches away from the hooks. And this is adjustable. I can move that little knot around, but I just simply take this very low profile sliding piece of hollow core and let that rest right against that. And you'd be amazed at, that's maybe about an inch long, and it weighs about a quarter ounce. And that does a tremendous job in getting your presentation down, especially if you have a little faster moving water. If you're fishing the head of a hole and that water's moving through pretty fast at the top end, it's the time of year where those springers, they like to tuck their nose up into the top end of that hole because they're getting that oxygenated water. They feel a little safer, especially on a sunny day, a sunny morning. They may tuck up into the upper end of that hole. Now, if you're fishing a 3/4 ounce float and a 5/8 ounce weight, and you don't have a midpoint weight on there, you're going to throw that presentation up above that stuff and sweep it through the hole. Problem is, your weight and everything will start sinking. Your bait may be delayed as it pendulums on down through and gets completely vertical as then it moves through the hole. So what you've done is you bypassed all the fish at the top end of the hole, and by the time you're actually vertical and at depth of fishing that position, you might be past where the fish are tucked up in there. So having a midpoint weight's going to get it done. Having it low profile like this ensures also that it's very snag resistant. I very seldom get hung up if I find myself fishing something a little shallower than I anticipated. I very seldom get hung up with that little sliding low profile weight on there. Now you could use an egg sinker. You could still do the old standby of crimping a split shot onto your leader, but for me, that puts a little bit of damage to that leader. It makes a weak point and it makes a failure point is what it ultimately does. So a sliding weight on there, the edges get rounded off. It's not an issue. It stops against that stopper and it gives you a midpoint weight that's going to get your presentation down. I like to use a double hook setup where it's approved, and you can do so. This is a 3/0 and a 1/0 stinger hook. Now I like to use a 3/0. I tie a nice big egg loop on there. You can put a decent size amount of eggs into that loop, and you still have the luxury of having that full-on size 1 or 1/0 hook below completely exposed. Okay, so give yourself about a finger width in between those two is typically what's going to get it done for you. At the bend of the hook to the eye of the stinger hook, you want about 1 finger width, and that will completely stay below or outside of your bait. That's going to definitely improve or increase your hookup to land ratio. Okay, so basically we're talking about a vertical presentation, and everything for me is completely vertical, from the float to the inline sinker, to the beads that I put in line here. Remember to put that little bobber stop underneath if you want to save your float. Straight in line, I put that midpoint weight simply by using that other bobber stop, and a dual hook setup. Very easy to fish, very easy to adjust your depth. If you move from hole to hole, especially if you're bank fishing, or even if you're in a drift boat because you're covering water, it's very simple to, well, I'll just let that sit out there. Very simple to adjust that depth of that bobber up and down depending on the depth of your hole. Now, that was the 10 to 20 pound rod. Real quickly before we get done here, talk about a couple other options. This is a 10.5 foot rod. This is a Northwest rods by my buddy Dave. Really nice rod, 10.5 foot, 8 to 17 bait caster, okay? Have a little bit of a smaller, low profile reel on here. Not as high as a drag break on here, but nonetheless still a good enough reel to get it done. The difference here, and I just happen to have this rigged up this way, not saying that you have to or don't have to on a lighter rod, but you could rig this exactly vertical like I just did. This one happens to be rigged up for a bobber dogging setup. And if you think you can't bobber dog for springers, then you are mistaken. So bobber dogging for springers is another good way to put that bait or presentation in front of them. Remember, when we're bobber dogging, we're not in a vertical presentation. That's why my weight is not in line with my presentation. This is set up as any bobber dogging rig with a bobber dogging float, with a flat back to it that the surface current is pushing it down river. The weight is dragging on the bottom. Our bobber stop is set 6, 8, 10 feet up the main line to allow the float to travel until it hits the stopper. Once it hits the stopper, it's pointing down river. The weight's dragging. And if you want, you don't have to. You can fish just bait. Okay, this pink is kind of bright, but I put it on there so you could see it. This is a 3/0 hook, a size 1 stinger. It has a big corky on there for buoyancy because, again, we're now basically drift fishing with a float. So we're adding a little extra buoyancy in there just to keep our presentation up off the bottom. Bobber dogging works in many facets. It works well for steelhead. It works great for fall Chinook and coho, and I guarantee you it also works for springers. If you're having a hard time on a drop-off area, trying to gauge exactly how deep you should be fishing if you're suspended vertically, you know, take all that guesswork out of adjusting your float up and down. Go to a bobber dog setup. You'll start off on that shallow ledge up top. That lead is going to follow the contour of the bottom right down into there to where those fish might be tucking their noses up into that shelf, and you'll get that presentation right in front of them. So bobber dogging is another good way to go about it. Again, the biggest difference here is this lighter rod. I will fish an 8 to 17 rod for springers all day long, especially tributary springers. Not saying we can't get 20 pounders, because we have, but 8 to 17 rod is going to handle that 20-pound fish all day long. Another good choice, if you're a spinning rod, if you choose to use a spinning rod, this is the Okuma Guide Select Pro. This is another 10.5-foot rod. Really like these rods. They're light. This is an 8 to 17. I got this bantam reel on here, or excuse me, this pin reel on here. This one is in fact set up as that vertical presentation. Once again, I got my midpoint weight on there. Dual hook. Actually, this one here I've cut down. I get the questions about when it's okay to use 2 hooks, okay? In some of our regulations, you have to really read your regs each and every year, because they will change. If it says single point barbless hooks, you're generally okay to use 2 hooks. If it says single point barbless hooks and it has trying to recall the extra rule that they put in the preface of your rule book, you got to look on specific rivers. There's some that we can't use dual hooks, but what you can do, because I like to have that exposed hook completely exposed when I'm fishing bait. So the old trick of tying on a tandem hook or a dual hook and simply cutting off that at the bend of your hook, leaving the main shank and the eyelet of your top hook, and then a fully exposed, this is a 3/0 hook dragging out of the bottom. But what that allows me to do is simply slide that egg loop out of there. Now I can put my bait up here in this upper holding area, and that's all that is an inline bait holder, and I still have a full hook exposed. Technically and legally, that is fishing 1 hook, and I simply have a bait holder above it. Again, when I'm fishing bait suspended under floats, I like to have a hook exposed, especially on some of these finicky biters that springers can be so particular sometimes. If you have that extra hook hanging out there completely unobstructed by bait, your hook up to land ratio goes up considerably. So that's another option. If you want to fish dual hooks, but you can't because of the legalities, simply cut that top hook at the bend, leave your bait loop, and fish that single exposed hook. So vertical presentation on this rod, again, this is that Okuma Guide Select model. Fantastic spinning rod, especially for fall salmon as well, for coho. Works great for springers. The line weight is everything that you need to handle a springer, no problem. Let's talk a little bit about float orientation before we wrap it up. Remember, we're fishing vertical. We have to have that float fishing vertical. If we are set at a certain depth and the float is pointing downriver, that means that my presentation, whether it's my bait or my weight, is dragging on bottom, and the float's going to be pointing down. So you need to bring it back in, slide your stopper down, which thereby shortens up your depth, and then cast it back out. One thing about fishing vertically is it's a great depth finder for you. If you step into a hole you haven't fished before and you set your stopper at 8 feet and you drift it through, you don't get bit. Bring it back in or drift that depth for a couple times. You don't get bit, but you think there's fish there. Slide that stopper up by a foot. Now you're going to cast it out the next time. You're going to be fishing that a foot deeper. You do that a few casts, you don't get bit. Slide it up a foot again. You do this until you make a drift through there and your bobber is pointing downriver, indicating to you that your presentation is now dragging. If you hit bottom and it's dragging, bring it back in, drop your or slide your stopper down 2 feet. I say 2 feet because now I know I'm with a foot or two of the bottom where those Chinook are going to be, and I'm definitely in the strike zone. So for that particular area that I'm fishing, I've just gauged the depth by casting out a series of times, adjusting my depth, dragging bottom, bring it back in, slide it up 2 feet. Now I've set my depth. It's going to be very effective in honing in exactly the depth that you're fishing based on unfamiliar water that you are fishing. That's how you gauge your depth, okay? So it's nice that you can adjust it any hole you step into, anywhere you fish, you can continue to play with your bobber stop up and down to make sure you're always gauging your depth. You want to be down off the bottom within a foot or two, but not dragging your bait. It has to be suspended to get Chinook. That's probably about it. We've covered weight, we've covered floats. Again, if you're fishing faster water, heads of holes, don't be afraid to step up to a 1 ounce bobber and a 3/4 ounce inline weight. If you're fishing some softer water that's not moving so fast, more times than not, especially on a 8 to 17 setup, you can get away with 3/4 ounce bobber and a 5/8 inline. Put that little stick inline midpoint weight on there, and your system is going to be rigged for success. That's going to pretty much wrap it up for us. If you have questions on anything that we talked about here today in the Bait Lab relative to tributary springer fishing, hit us up on Facebook, hit us up on YouTube, hit us with those questions. Go to our YouTube channel and subscribe. These videos will be broken out of our main show and put out there as individual how-tos, something we're going to continue to do each and every week. Okay, with that, we're going to wrap it up here. Step out for a quick commercial break. Pretty excited about this. We come back in studio, we're going to have Dave Shamp, and we're going to get into a deep discussion on hatchery and wild coexist. All that and more right here when we come back on FHN. Hey, welcome back to Fish on Northwest. We're back here in the main studio, and I want to introduce our guest for this week, Dave Shamp. So glad you could make the drive up here. Left at, what'd you say, 5 a.m. this morning?
Yeah, it wasn't quite that early.
Yeah.
But, yeah, about 10:30 this morning.
Well, I'm so glad you could be here. I've been looking forward to this show since you and I talked down in Portland at the Portland Sportsman Show, and I told you it's going to get a new thing going here. I want you to be a part of it. So thanks for coming up. Dave is here to discuss and cuss and get into the weeds on hatchery and wild coexist. You're also chairman of the board for CCA Oregon, correct?
True enough. Yes.
So retired, but staying extremely busy.
Oh man, I tell you what, retirement is not overrated by any stretch. But I'm staying just as busy, if not busier.
Yep.
But the good news is now I get to do what I want to do.
Correct.
And not what somebody else wants me to do.
That's
big difference.
Yeah. Well, Barnum and I and Tommy can only, look down the road someday. We're going to be there, right? Far away. So
I'll get here quicker than you can imagine.
Yep. So as we kind of mentioned at the beginning of the show, and you and I talked earlier in the week, and I went back and I got online and I grabbed that documentary that was created about 5 years ago.
Yep.
With the likes of a handful of folks throughout the Pacific Northwest, well known. If you are out fishing in whether you're Olympic Peninsula, down coastal Oregon, here central, wherever, these faces that are in this video, right?
Great piece of work. Yeah, Carmen McDonald and Mr. Bassett from the Steelheaders.
Correct.
Lance Fisher put that video together. Yeah. Outstanding piece of work.
Really was.
And hopefully folks have had a chance to see that. It is, right, as you mentioned, about 28 minutes long.
Yeah.
But it really does a fantastic job of telling the story.
Right. Well, the mantra here is change the narrative.
Exactly.
Correct. So if you watch that, you are compelled to change the narrative because the information that's obtained and presented there is like, wow, for a lot of folks, maybe if you've just been on the fringe and not really paying attention, you kind of go, wow, there's really something to this, okay? And I was happy to see that about 7,000 of our folks tuned into that thing the last 2 days that I posted that up, trying to get you guys ready for the conversation we're going to have tonight. So
perfect.
Let's back up a little bit and talk about the last 30 years of hatchery management. Why is there such a distaste in everybody's mouth, on the roof of our palate, what we've been fed now in the latter part of this hatchery process to believe truly is what's going on with these hatchery fish, detrimental to wild fish. We got to get them out of the rivers. Wild fish will never make it back if we just seed everything with hatchery fish. Why do we all have that? Not us, but why does the majority have that understanding or misunderstanding?
That's a great question. I've been involved in fish advocacy all of my adult life. I got out of the Air Force in 1978, got involved with the Northwest Steelheaders. So I've been at this for a long time. That's 40 years of advocating for our fish. And about 30 years ago, we were being told by the experts that hatchery fish were having a negative impact on our wild fish. So we needed to reduce and in some instances eliminate hatchery supplementation so our wild fish could recover.
Right.
And we were all about that, right? That's
I drank the Kool-Aid.
Absolutely.
I
so
believed
did
it.
I drank it big time.
Yep. Huh?
Yeah.
You were guiding back, years ago, and it's the thing that we all were led to believe.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So if we need to suffer, if you will, a downturn in fishing opportunity in order to have those wild fish repopulate, we were good with that, right? That we're going to sacrifice for the sake of the wild fish.
I remember having those conversations like, well, we're going to have a couple downturn years, but it's all good. We're willing to take that, kind of take a break, not be able to have as lucrative bag limits. Maybe some areas we won't be able to keep fish at all, but we'll have catch and release. And, we're positive that this is going to turn it around. We're going to see these wild fish come back and life's going to be good.
And think about those fish back then, 20, 30 years ago, the difference between a hatchery fish then and a wild fish, right? So wild fish, you're catching these 12, 15-pound steelhead. Of course, in Oregon, they're going to tell you they're a 20-pound steelhead.
Yeah, exactly.
We all get that. And counter to that were these hatchery brats, 4 or 5 pound fish, so there was a significant difference. And we were all bought into, wouldn't it be great if all day long we were catching these big, healthy wild fish?
Yep.
So we were all in. Here we are 30 years later.
Yeah.
How's it played out, guys? How's it worked out?
Terrible.
We have not seen a rebound in our wild fish.
Right.
And we've seen a significant decrease in our opportunity when it comes to hatchery fish. So we've seen this as anglers, guides in particular that are out there every day, 300 days a year, and we've said, so what's up, fishery managers? What's going on? You gave us this promise, if you will, that if we took these hatchery fish out, we'd see a rebound in the wild fish.
Yep.
And that simply has not occurred.
In both steelhead and ESA listed Chinook.
Yep.
Right? This flag has been carried by numerous folks for years. Hatchery managers, privatized groups that are kind of poking the bear and making sure this flag continues to be carried.
Right.
And so the cutbacks continued. The budgets were cut because they're like, oh, we don't have to raise all these hatchery fish. Now we actually can allocate the money over to here.
Right.
Once you move that money, it's almost impossible to get it back. So that's one thing we're up against, I know.
And the facilities have gone into decay.
Yep.
Right? They're not being properly
Well, we don't need them.
maintained.
We don't have to raise all these hatchery fish.
So what kind of die-offs did you guys see in some of your hatcheries this year in Washington? You had some huge.
Yeah, tremendous Chinook loss secondary to a windstorm.
Yeah, because
completely unacceptable.
Because the generator quit working.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
what?
So that's the path they chose to go down. So break it down for us relative to steelhead, and then we'll leave coho off the table for now. Let's focus on steelhead and Chinook. Washington and Oregon, how many rivers can they accurately account for where they have eliminated or greatly reduced the amount or percentage of hatchery releases in both Chinook and steelhead? And we've seen staggering numbers or even a glimmer of hope of wild fish returning without those damn hatchery fish eating their ability to survive.
Well, this will probably shock you. There is no known instance in the states of Oregon and Washington where there was a significant reduction or elimination of hatchery supplementation where there was a corresponding increase in productivity or abundance of wild fish. No known instance
Is this
where
where
there wasn't some other contributing factor.
Right. Is this where Bonham
None.
shows you his shock face now?
Right. Yeah. Everybody went
It's like, what? Yeah. No, exactly. Right. So 10 years ago or so, people kind of collective minds got together, started thinking, maybe we should start looking at the other side of this thing. When about 10 years, 12 years ago, when did this science start getting drum up as far as this coexisting philosophy that they really wanted to actually get tangible results looking at it to say, is this truly happening or not?
Yeah, it is interesting that the newer science, those studies that have been completed since 2005, 2006, actually are giving a different answer than some of those earlier studies.
Yeah.
Now, there's no question that the wild fish advocates can show studies, a lot of studies, where there has been a negative impact from the hatchery fish on the wild fish. But here's the kicker. We were able to identify 22 studies at the population level. So a lot of those studies are looking at individual fish. They're not looking at the overall population of fish. So again, we found 22 studies looking at the impact at the population level.
Okay.
Out of those 22 studies, 8 showed a negative effect, 4 showed a positive effect, and 10 showed no effect. So that's 14 out of the 22 that showed either a positive effect or no effect. That's almost 2 to 1.
That is almost 2 to 1. So thereby now we've kind of, we're trying to push to the forefront. It's being received pretty well in some regards, but we have those wild fish groups that are pushing back hard.
Sure.
Right? And this is going to be a butting of heads for quite some time. Changing the narrative is going to take some work.
Well, we're up against 20, 30 years of drinking the Kool-Aid. And we're all just now getting it out of our systems.
Yeah.
So this information has been out there.
Sure.
But it hasn't been brought to the forefront.
Right.
People just don't know. And when you show them the studies, when you show them the science, it's like I always say, stories are like pancakes. There's 2 sides. And only one side of the story has been put out there for the last 20 to 30 years.
Right.
And now that we're putting the other side of the story out, the reaction has been phenomenal.
Right.
Folks get it real quick because it aligns with their experience.
That's what I was just going to say, is your real life experience when you're on the river, when you're out doing your fishing, you're seeing this in real life, and the narrative that has been pushed up to this point hasn't made sense in your head. And now that somebody comes out and shows the science that goes, yeah, that's what I was thinking. So I think among sportsmen, changing the narrative is going to be really easy and really fast.
Yeah.
Now, among the other side, We know humans like to be stubborn and don't always want to give up what they believe to be truth, but it can happen, I think.
Well, and I think an important point there. So this is not an anti-wild fish campaign by any stretch at all.
Which has been made very clear on your website.
Right. So this is about doing everything we can to enhance our wild fish, but at the same time recognizing that we need hatchery fish in order to have consumptive fisheries. Now, when I looked at the numbers in Washington, all I could find was that the majority of salmon and steelhead that are harvested are out of hatcheries. So I don't know what that means. 51%, 60%.
Right.
In Oregon, 70% of the salmon and steelhead that are harvested, that's both recreational and commercial, are hatchery origin fish.
Huh.
70% of the fish that go home and people enjoy come from hatcheries. So there's this notion that we're just going to do away with our hatcheries. There wouldn't be any fish for us to catch.
No, I've said that for years. No hatchery means no fishing.
Right.
Yep.
So what we're advocating for is a hatchery system that is providing the most fit, the most robust, the best genetic match we can have when it comes to the fish that are being released with our wild fish.
Yeah.
So that they can coexist. It has been shown, there are scientific studies out there that show hatcheries, hatchery fish can actually rebuild a native fishery that is on the brink of extinction or actually extinct.
Right.
So hatcheries are not a bad thing, and that's the message of hatchery and wild coexist. We're highlighting the importance, the value of hatcheries, recognizing that the hatchery practices that were in play 20 to 30 years ago, 100 years ago, were not very good.
Yeah, they're wrong.
They were wrong.
We're seeding everything with the same strain of fish.
Right, right.
It'd be like a family tree, basically looks like a telephone pole.
Yeah, those domesticated
that's pretty much
fish,
what it is, right?
Right, and they were the little 4 or 5 pound
Yep.
tanks. They weren't all that great to catch anyway. But with the new broodstock programs that we're seeing, the integrated programs, there's some really great stuff happening there.
I'm going to hold you right there. We're going to jump out for a break. Not because I don't want to have this conversation, but we're going to.
Are you going to open beer?
Yeah, I want to, but we're kind of hanging on to this as a... Anyway.
Oh, come on, Dwayne.
When we come back, second segment with you, we're going to get into broodstock. We're going to have that discussion about when those broodstock fish actually natural spawn with wild fish, fitness level, type of fish it generates in 2 life cycles, what they've proven.
Yep.
You and I had a great conversation in Portland that it opened my eyes. A lot of really good scientific data to back this up. That's pretty exciting. So if you're an advocate for bringing more fish back to our rivers and give us opportunities as recreational anglers, you're going to like the direction this is going. This is really compelling information. So we're going to talk about all that second segment with you. We're going to jump out for a commercial break. We come back, we're going to jump into the kitchen with Chef Kelly and Sherry for the recipe of the week. And I still didn't find out what the heck they're cooking, but I guess after we watch this
Swedish meatballs.
from in here, we'll watch what they got.
Swedish meatballs?
Oh, you popped in there to get Dave, and they had it going on. Okay. It looks like we got some venison Swedish meatballs. We come back from the break. So don't go anywhere. The FA Channel will be right back.
everyone, welcome back to Fish Hut Northwest. We're here in the kitchen with Chef Kelly for our recipe of the week, which I believe is some venison meatballs. Okay.
Swedish meatballs. Yes.
So is there a difference?
Yes, there's absolutely a difference. They are seasoned with some odd seasonings that I think most people wouldn't grab. Okay. And that's actually nutmeg and allspice. I mean, you think of that as like pumpkin pie stuff, you know.
Right.
Yeah. So we're starting with our venison grind. This is a great way to use up your ground venison. This, of course, is an 80-20 grind. And there you go. All right, so we're going to start with our bread.
White bread.
White bread.
White bread.
I don't like the crust, so I cut that off.
Wasteful.
Whatever.
Feed it to your birds.
There you go. We're not going to use it today. All right. So then we're just going to chop this up just a little bit. Doesn't have to be pretty. Then we're just chopping it up. Yep. Okay, so I'm going to say this is a 1/4 cup of milk, but really you just need some milk because basically what we're doing is we're going to just get this absorbed all in there. And then we're just going to squeeze this out. So I don't need all this extra liquid.
Just the right amount.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So you get the basic concept. Not yet, because I want to use that same bowl.
Get grabby.
Right? So we want to use that same bowl for our egg. We're going to whip this up.
Making scrambled egg.
Yep. Okay. Another thing I also do if I'm going to do like something like this, I add my seasonings to here. So we're going to add about a teaspoon of salt.
Okay.
A teaspoon of our nutmeg.
Now, what kind of flavor does that actually give to the dish?
It gives the kind of, you know, those sweet spices kind of, you know, that's why, you know, people go to IKEA and they go, wow, what does that taste? I can't put my finger on it. It's just because they just don't associate it with a savory dish. So same thing with the allspice, about a teaspoon. Swedish.
IKEA.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
It's incredible how many they sell there too, by the way. Yeah. And you can easily make these at home. About a teaspoon of pepper. And so I sauteed some onions earlier. This is a half an onion. I just went ahead and saute those up. Okay.
Is that kind of prime the pan also?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so we get that all mixed up in here. So then we don't go get some kind of a big clump of spices going. Right, because who wants to have a whole mouthful of nutmeg, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I've already washed my hands already. Okay, now you can get rid of that.
Now I can do my job.
Okay. All right, so we're just going to get in there.
So I see some that you've already prepared, so we can get a look at them.
Right, so yeah, that's what, golf ball size?
Yep.
Yeah, so make sure you just mix this up really good. You know, sometimes when people think about meatballs, they think, wow, you know, I want to make the best meatball I can. And so I'm going to use 100% meat. That's not a good meatball.
No.
If you do 100% meat, you're going to go, well, you know, you're just, you know, trying to extend them out or trying to do something else with the meatball. I want to make a better meatball, but no filler in there.
Have some fat in there to...
No, I mean just the bread. Like people want, they want to leave the bread out. And I know you're keto friendly, but if you do that, then your meatballs are going to suffer. They're going to be a little more tough. So, okay.
I never knew what the bread was for.
Right, and that's what it is. Okay, so about that size right there. Okay, so of course we made a couple of those already.
Yep.
All right.
Well, the crew will get to enjoy these today.
Okay. All right. So we're going to start our sauce. So we're going to start with a 1/4 cup of butter, half a stick of butter.
Right.
Okay. You see we got our pan already hot, ready to go, rock and roll.
Now, take that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, nice and hot.
Nice
There
and
you go.
hot. Okay, we're gonna add our flour.
About a quarter cup, or is that
That's
quarter cup?
let's see the cute little. Okay. Nice little nut brown color to it.
Okay.
Okay, and we're gonna add our beef stock to it. Usually I add about half.
Just straight
This is going to be
stock again.
3 cups of beef stock, and I'm not adding all of it yet because I want to make sure I don't have any lumps. So I have my little whisk, make sure I get all my lumps out. Now you can go dump and go.
Okay.
Okay, I'm
Dump
going to
and go.
reserve just a little bit of that. So it's probably 2.5 and about a cup of cream.
So that's the heavy cream.
Heavy cream, right?
Very popular with the keto.
Right. So this is going to be, let's do about a teaspoon of black pepper. We're going to have to season this, and we're going to probably come back and re-season it because commercial beef stock has a lot of salt in it. So you really don't want to have to make it, have it reduced down and be too salty. Okay.
I know a lot of guys on our crew and stuff, they make their own.
Yes,
beef
and
stock.
I highly recommend that you make your own beef stock. It's you know what's going in it. You're going to have a lot more flavor. Another thing is that commercial beef stock really didn't have any gelatin to it, and so when you make your own beef stock, it's going to have a little more mouth feel to it. Has a little viscosity to it. It's because the gelatin's coming out of those bones. Yeah, and so I also add just another little teaspoon of our spices, our allspice. Ooh, too much. Go. This stuff's powerful. Okay, another teaspoon of nutmeg. And if you wanted to use fresh nutmeg, absolutely, that's way better flavor too.
Wow.
Yes.
And that at.
You can find whole nutmeg at at most of your nice grocery stores, and just use your microplane. All right. Well, this is needs to come to a simmer to get thickened up here.
All right. About 20 minutes.
Well,
Well, then
and
it sounds like a great time to throw it back to the guys in the studio for this week's regional weather report.
Well, welcome back into the studio. Yeah, Barnum, you nailed it. Swedish venison, Swedish
Yes.
meatballs. Looking pretty tasty. Gotta apologize. Looks like we're having a little bit of audio difficulty there in the kitchen tonight. What are you going to do? It's show number 4, right, Dave?
Yeah.
So we're finding our way, but we'll try to work the bugs out when we come back at the end of the show to finalize that segment. Anyway, Dave, we got our guests on the phone. Standing by. We're going to get Art Taschel on the phone. He basically runs, if you've been down to Point Defiance Marina and Boathouse, you'll see Art down there running around, taking care of everybody, getting them their boats, getting them whatever you need, selling tackle, get you your fresh herring, whatnot. So is he on there with us?
Yes.
Oh, hey, Art, how you doing?
I'm doing well, kinda. Down here in California, things are kind of interesting at the Pacific Fisheries Marine Council, but I'm sure that's not what we're talking about.
Well, yeah, I want to thank you for taking time out this evening to jump on the phone with us here on the show. As you and I talked earlier in the week, you are down there in California for the PFMC North of Falcon process, so I'm sure you had a lengthy day, if I'm not mistaken, and hopefully it's going well. I know you got a long week ahead of you, and it's never a good time by any means, but let's hope we make some good progress. How's that sound?
Let's hope so. It's starting off pretty interesting,
Oh.
but it always does, so hopefully it gets better.
Yeah, okay. Well, hey, I wanted you to jump on the phone tonight. We're having a great in-studio conversation with Dave Champ with Hatchery and Wild Coexist, and kind of totes the line also along with some of the programs you're working on through the Northwest Salmon processes you're involved with. And we're talking about the first placement of net pens in our Puget Sound waters down there between Narrows Marina and the Point Defiance Boathouse area. So what can you tell us about that net pen program? When do you think those fish are going to get put into that pen? And how many do you think we're looking at?
That project, saltwater acclimation pen, I'm going to call it, is probably going to take fish, if not by this weekend, next week, 30 to 50,000 Chinook from the Puyallup River, from the Puyallup tribe. They donated those fish because Minter Creek Hatchery had an issue where we were going to get some fish. So they were nice enough to step up and provide those fish. Now those fish are clipped because we want them caught so that we can do the science behind that. We got the Tacoma Public Schools, their Science and Math Institute, coordinated with Chief Leschi, local schools as well, to do a science-based and culture project on those fish. And so we got that going right now. The pens are ready to go. And the plan is to expand upon that now that we got our feet wet. And we've got coordination with the local tribes, which have been very helpful, like Squaxins, the Squallies, and obviously the Puyallups, WDFW, Puget Sound Angler, the Harbor Group. As you can see, a lot of collaboration going on here. Northwest Salmon Research is a new nonprofit, fairly new. We kind of threw it together last fall. We've got a lot of partners involved in that. Orca Design Group designed a website. Go check it out if someone gets a chance. Northwest Salmon Research. And also they developed the design on the canned beer that we came up with. So with Harmon Brewing Company and Orchid Design, they put that together. It's the first canned brew, I believe, by Harmon Brewing, and they wanted to give back to the local community, South Puget Sound, and help southern resident killer whales in the process. So that was awesome. So that was all put together, and then there was another company called E6PR, Eco6 Pack Ring. So that pack ring on there is made out of a byproduct of making beer. And so those things are eco-friendly and basically fish food.
Nice.
So if they fall in the water, they'll break down, fish can eat them, they'll grow, and not harm them. So I think that's really going to take off in the future.
Cool. So not to interrupt you, but these fish that are going into the net pen, now you said those are Puyallup strain fish. So those are a fall Chinook and not a blackmouth, correct?
Those are fall Chinook, and they're not resident blackmouth. Someday down the road, and the difference between resident Chinook and those would be a delayed release program. So in other words, you'd hold those fish over 8 months to a year, and then they have a tendency to stick around. The hope is in the future, next couple of years, we initiate another program at another location. I'm kind of hoping at Point Defiance, we'll see how that shakes out, and then we'll actually initiate some programs like that, and the schools can take over. We've got some experimental fish foods we're using that's supposed to allow those fish to better acclimate to saltwater pen rearing, just makes them healthier. So we're doing that, and the schools are doing all kinds of science and stuff behind that, water quality, testing, monitoring,
right,
all that kind of stuff.
So does that...
Go ahead.
You guys are using the Puyallup strain, so does that kind of help with some of the concerns that people would have with straying?
Yeah, well, the location is far enough from any of the rivers, the Puyallup and the Squally, it'll minimize straying. Plus, those fish are from those local rivers, so even if they do stray, their genes are so close to the natural fish that it really wouldn't cause any issue. So we were able to get that program up and going because of that. So you got to do a lot of research behind it, make sure you got the right fish, the right location, and collaborate with everybody to make this thing work. It's been kind of something I've been working on for a number of years, and you sit around and talk to a bunch of fishermen around the campfire here and there, mostly up on the Olympic Peninsula, and things kind of came together. So, so that's what's going on there.
Hey, Art, is that process that has been a couple years in the making, as you said, is this one of those things that has to be permitted by NOAA?
They have to be involved in the discussions because you have to use those fish we're talking about.
Yeah.
You can't just grab any fish anywhere and use those, and NOAA will not approve of it unless you do.
Sure. Okay.
So,
well, and a lot of those
factors permitted.
Yeah, a lot of those factors that we've brought up or that comes up in conversation, genetic strains of fish, possible straying, implications of that happening, and just to put a program like this in place with the fact that it hasn't really existed before previous, other than if you're talking about resident blackmouth releases. So this is something new and exciting. This is the first of, I'm assuming, several pens that are planned over the next course of what, year, 2 years, 5 years. This is going to be an ongoing process and try to establish more net pens throughout Puget Sound?
Yeah, that's the whole idea, is to expand other projects like that, net pens like that, as well as, not just sticking to Chinook, although that's the main driver right now. Most people like Chinook.
Yeah.
Killer whales like Chinook. Everybody likes Chinook.
Everybody likes Chinook.
There you go. Everybody wants a king.
But there's good opportunity for coho, too. So we're looking at some streams where we can put egg boxes. We got some egg boxes and net pens and other equipment donated or potentially donated by Gary Loomis and his Fish First people down in Southwest Washington.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So we've been working with him. He's been awesome. He's all excited about the program. The schools are all excited about it. So that's what's really helped take off.
Yeah, what a great educational opportunity for the kids, no doubt about it.
Oh,
so
perfect.
With all the things going on, the struggles and, conversations we're having here tonight, Dave, and just the future of our fisheries, whether we're talking Chinook, steelhead, coho, chum, even our pink salmon are struggling thanks to Mother Nature and her big ass blob that hovered over us for a couple of years there starting in 2015.
Right.
So we got a lot of recovery efforts to work and manage our way through. This is another, put the checkbox in the positive column, because this one's going to have some really good outcome in the shortcomings. 3 to 4 years down the road, we'll see the amount of fish that are returning to Puget Sound. It's pretty exciting, especially if you're a mid to south Puget Sound angler that wants to see more fish in areas 11 and 13. So, Art, I know you're a busy man. I appreciate you taking time to jump on the phone with us this evening. Good luck this week down there at PFMC. I wish you the best, my man, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, guys.
You bet. Take care.
Bye-bye.
So, again, another great example of some of the programs going on that people need to be made aware of, that, this is part of our future and our next generation's futures of opportunity to get more fish back in our waters and try to find ways to combat all the things that are striking against us in the realm of bringing fish back, whether we're talking bird predation, pinniped predation, loss of habitat, hydro, lack of hatchery fish, over-harvest. The list goes on and on.
Yep.
It's nice to look at something like I just mentioned in the good column and give it a check mark and say, hey, let's see where this goes, right? So I think what we're going to do is we're going to jump out for a break. And we come back, Barnum, we'll hammer out a quick weather report, because we got some interesting weather this weekend, I think, is what we were talking before. And then I want to get back to Dave before you sneak on out of here or get bored or fall asleep or whatever. You retired guys.
This is a comfortable chair.
Yeah, I know. Sherry picked those out. So everybody says it like, oh my God, I could just, give me a bourbon and I'm done. So we're going to jump out for a quick commercial break. We come back, we'll hit you with a tri-state regional weather report, and then we'll get on to talking about some things that matter. Don't go anywhere. Come right back here on FHM. Hey, welcome back to FHN. We have a ton of information we're still going to extract out of the cranium of Dave Champ before you get out of here. But before we go there, there's some weather changes coming we want to make you guys aware of. Maybe you thought about getting out on the ocean this weekend, or getting outside without a rain jacket. I think Barnum's going to change your mind. What do you got?
Yeah, we've kind of switched, and we are back in this pattern of a normal Pacific Northwest spring. I wanted to pull up here. This is for Montesano. It kind of gives you a 5-day forecast, and as you can see, tomorrow's not going to be a bad day. We're going to be partly sunny, but then we're going to go into periods of rain on Saturday, periods of rain on Sunday, periods of rain on Monday. Just your typical Northwest spring, Western Washington, Western Oregon pattern.
Good times.
The 10-day model kind of shows us, as we look at precipitation, for Saturday, you can see, we're looking at up in the Olympic Peninsula and North Puget Sound. You're looking at up to an inch of rain. All the way down the coast of Washington and Oregon, you're looking at anywhere from a quarter to a half an inch of rain.
Yeah.
So, we have rain coming again all weekend. Temperatures are going to be fairly mild. Your low temperatures for most of the west side is going to be in the 40s. East side, you're going to be down, around freezing. As we move forward with that, let's kind of look at the ocean forecast. Again, another weekend, another chance to go hit the ocean and do some bottom fishing, and we see it's going to blow. Saturday, you're looking at south winds, 15 to 25 knots, becoming west in the afternoon, a wind wave of 1 to 3 feet with a swell 10 feet at 15 seconds. So you're going to be right back in that 10 to 13 foot swell. Again, not a very good fishing weekend.
No, it doesn't sound very exciting at all.
As we go into Sunday, it doesn't improve. Winds pick up to 25 knots. Wind waves go to 4 feet, and that swell is going to jump to 15 feet. So I'm assuming probably most of your charter boats are canceling. Yeah. The wreck guys, I'm sure, have canceled.
Yeah.
Looking at Puget Sound, you got a little bit of blackmouth fishing left.
Sure.
And from what we're hearing, it's fishing really well.
Yeah.
So are we going to be able to fish there? Well, Saturday you have a south wind 14 to 17 knots with gusts as high as 23 and wind waves around 2 feet. So that's not going to be perfect for the troll.
No, slap you around a little bit.
That's crab walking down there.
Little slap and tickles.
Right. Sunday it does become better. Variable winds less than 5 knots. Southwest 5 to 8 in the afternoon. Shower wind waves 1 foot or less. So you're going to be able to get out there, I think, on Sunday.
Yeah.
And more than likely, probably have a little bit of a rising barometer Sunday, and it could turn on a little bit
as
of a
we
bite.
turn. Yeah, good point.
Right. Let's throw out a quick river forecast. Up for the peninsula on the Clawwa near Forks, you're kind of seeing, the levels are still a little bit elevated for this weekend around the, 13th and 14th. On the high end, but Sunday again they're gonna start to decline, and the river's gonna be on the decline. But it's fairly short-lived. Towards the middle of the week, things are gonna bump up again. This is the Columbia we talked about, and these on the river flows on the Columbia sometimes on the charts are kind of tricky to read
because of tides
and this up and down. But I felt like this one at St. Helens kind of gives the best picture of the river itself. Of course, like we said, they've extended the Springer season for this weekend, the 13th and 14th.
And look at your 13th and 14th.
Right, and you're going to have a building flow finishing up this week, and then the levels are going to be declining.
Still going to be on the high side.
It's a little on the high side, probably a bit murky.
See that little yellow line at the top of the page?
Yeah.
We are not too far from that.
No. It's not going to be the best weekend of fishing there. So as we jump over to the east side and we look at the Clearwater at Orofino, if you guys want to get on some steelhead action over there, that one's looking pretty good.
Not too bad. Good drop, actually.
Back down on the drop and looking like the river levels on Sunday are going to really flatten out before it takes a little turn back up, but very fishable.
Well, remember, we can fish steelhead on the Clearwater through the end of April.
Right. So
still got some opportunity there.
I want to go back to this Montesano forecast because Monday starts turkey season. And we do have some turkeys here on the west side. The Willapa Hills has a small kind of group, not a real popular hunt, but there are some birds in the Willapa Hills. Up around the Montesano Elma area, I've been told of some turkeys. If you look at Monday and we go into that forecast a little bit deeper, It's just a shower pattern. There is, I think you could probably get out in the morning and potentially have an opportunity. Well, it's not going to let me there, but potentially have an opportunity to be able to call some birds. I don't know how call receptive they're going to be this early in the season, especially on the west side. But get out there and give it a shot. Jump over to Colville, Monday the 15th. You're seeing 53 degrees during the day and just below freezing in the morning. It's looking like a pretty good turkey hunting day in the Colville area.
If it's dry and you can get those up to 50-degree temps, by afternoon you might get something. I wouldn't get out there in that early hunt. Them things might even not come out of the roost by 10 o'clock because it might be only 30 degrees. But once that sun hits, it warms up, you might see them running around a little bit.
Yeah, not a bad day weather-wise for a turkey opener. Why not give it a shot?
Sure. Is that your pun?
That's my pun.
Why not give it a shot?
Why not give it a shot?
Why not give it a shot? Okay.
Next
Excellent.
t-shirt.
Appreciate it. All right, let's do this. I want to discuss with Dave. We're going to get in some more information here. We're going to jump out for a break. We got to finish getting our cooking segment in. But right now, let's break down that concept or misunderstanding of we have broodstock fish. They come back. Some of them naturally spawn in the river alongside with wild fish. There are those, historically, if you look at that as a hatchery fish and say, well, that's detrimental to survivability of wild fish, you are weakening the strain, the fitness level is such, it's bad. But we're taking these broodstock fish of in-basin genetics that pretty much couple right up with that wild fish. You get a broodstock buck and a wild hen, and they produce offspring. Those fish pop out of the gravel, head out to ocean, make it back. Those fish spawn in river. That next generation cycle of life, those fish coming out of the gravel are fit,
natural originated fish,
aren't they?
Yeah. So if you take two wild adults and artificially spawn them and raise their offspring in a hatchery for a short period of time, it has been shown that the genetics change.
Okay.
I've tried to have it explained to me, and they talk about all these little switches that get changed in there, but they're in a different environment. So you wouldn't think it would mess with the genetics, but it does.
Yeah.
So that's the wild fish advocates say, well, that's a problem because the genetics are messed up. So that's no longer a wild fish. Now that's a domesticated fish.
Okay.
Right. So what you're suggesting is those returning adults. They're hatchery fish. They come back and they may spawn in the wild.
Sure.
Well, what the wild fish advocates don't tell you is that in one generation, they're right back to where they started from.
So
they switch because of their environment, but they switch right back because they're back in their natural environment.
And that is the side of the story, the other side of the story that we've never heard. Right. Is that they can switch back just as they switched in the first place in the concrete environment.
Right.
These fish don't know any difference. They rear up out of the gravel. They acclimate themselves in stream. They're there for a year to 18 months, depending on species of fish. They reach mature smolt time frame in their life, and they outbound. And by the grace of God, they survive, and they come back. They don't know any difference.
No.
They don't know any difference.
You've got that natural selectivity going on again, which is one of the other criticisms of the hatchery environment.
Yeah.
That you don't have that selectivity going on.
Right.
But just that quick, they flip back to exactly what they were, close to exactly what they were prior
More
to having that
natural
one
origin, natural survivability instincts. Let's talk a little bit about some of the revelations rearing hatchery fish. Hatching them out, raising these fry into smolt in a concrete environment, long, elongated, rectangular, square concrete pens versus round racetracks. I equated it to you either get raised on a treadmill or a couch.
Exactly.
And there's something going on.
I just heard about this.
Yeah.
So apparently this took place in a PUD hatchery in Washington, where they were actually trying to mitigate challenges with their water system. They had challenges with having enough water.
Yeah.
So they started using circular raceways as opposed to the normal rectangular raceways. And what they found was that these fish were much more fit when they were released, and they saw an almost immediate increase in the return rate. And the reason is, like you say, in a rectangular raceway, there are places where those fish can, as you put it earlier, they can get on the couch.
Yeah.
They can just take a break, lay back, no challenge.
Right.
But in a circular raceway, they're swimming all the time.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's part of that natural selection again, right?
Sure.
If they aren't fit enough to be able to survive swimming all the time, they aren't going to make it out. So it's amazing to me to see this something that simple have that much of an impact. So again, that's part of the Hatchery Wild Coexist campaign, is to suggest and move our hatchery programs forward with these kinds of technologies. It was mentioned earlier about the food. You know, there have been tremendous changes now and improvements when it comes to the food that these fish are being fed, and the impact that that has on their fitness when they're released. So there's a lot we can do, and we need to reinvest in our hatcheries. We need to reinvest in those hatchery programs to make sure we're putting the best product out there that we can. You know, you mentioned the broodstock programs.
Yeah.
So one of the advantages to that is a higher return rate. And it can be anywhere from 5 to 7 times better.
Sure.
So what's happened is our state agencies see the opportunity there. So instead of planting 300,000 fish, they plant 150,000 fish.
Because the return rate's higher.
The return rate's higher. So what if we plant 350,000 broodstock fish, and we're going to see that 5 to 7 times better return rate? That's what we want to see. We want to see the best possible fish out there that we can raise and put in that environment with the best possible return. Healthy and abundant fisheries. That's the goal.
Right. That could be a big budget fixer. I mean, you have a healthier fish coming back, but the amount of budget it required to get that return is going to be less than what we're doing now. So I mean, that's when we're dealing with budget all the time. I mean, that's huge.
Yeah, if it's an investment in your bank, you would be happy with that return.
Absolutely.
Right? Absolutely. If you keep conducting business the way we're doing it, you're not going to retire anytime soon because you're going to be flat broke.
Every single day, the agency's talking about budget shortfall. I mean, so any way we can come up with ways to increase production on a smaller budget seems pretty simple to me.
Well, and it's the right thing to do for the fish. Right.
Yep. And, you know, the bottom line here is that this information is backed by science. Sound science.
Right.
Not saying it's the cure-all, fix-all, but it's another step in the right direction of doing things the right way after doing things the wrong way for so many years, that we're going to start turning the corner to, you know, change the narrative and change the ability to get fish to survive and make it back. I think we're going down the right road here, and there'll be those that are in opposition, I'm sure, but you know, it's worth a shot because what we've been doing is broken.
It's not working.
Been broken for a long time, and it's time to change it and make it change. So we are going to jump out for a break. We come back. We're going to be back in the kitchen to finish up those Swedish meatballs, and then we get done with that. Hopefully they keep them warm because when we get out of here, I'm hungry.
I'm looking forward to that.
We're going to finish up with you, Dave. We're going to make sure everybody knows where to find the information, websites to go to, where they can go to get questions answered. Want to make sure we leave them here with, you know, plenty of education on where to get the intel.
And how to get stickers.
We'll talk about all that and more. We're going to take a break. We come back. We'll be in the kitchen with Chef Kelly and Sherry to finish up those meatballs. Don't go anywhere. Back here in a little bit on FHM.
What if there was a smarter way to search for your new home? Introducing the Better Homes and Gardens real estate website and mobile app. This revolutionary new search tool puts your needs first. Narrow your search to what matters most to your family, like school data, school districts, and even walk scores. Get easy access to your local affiliated agent, as well as unique and local insights about neighborhoods and properties directly within the app. With synced and saved preferences, you'll always pick up wherever you left off. Get your smarter search started today with Better Homes and Gardens Real Estate.
Hey guys, welcome back to the kitchen. And I believe we are just about ready to throw these Swedish meatballs into the pan.
Yes. Balls are ready.
Okay, he went there. Let's go.
All right, guys. So we have to sear our meatballs.
All
All right,
right.
got a pan hot, ready to go.
Hot and ready to go.
Medium heat.
Okay.
So we're looking to just get some color on these guys.
Yeah.
We're not looking to fully cook these things, so don't have to go crazy. Kind of toe the line of too much color and blah, blah, blah.
All right, so you're just basically browning them and
Yeah.
searing them. Yeah.
So
All right.
not going to crowd the pan too much because,
Okay.
you know, crowding the pan is not a good thing because what happens is that you're going to start steaming stuff and it's not what we're trying to go for. So
Okay.
be prepared to do a couple multiple batches.
All right. And you had the sauce simmering for at least 20 minutes.
Yeah, at least
Yeah.
20 minutes, you know, we're just trying to,
Just a low simmer.
yeah, it's a little
Yeah.
simmer.
Covered. All right.
A little bit. Okay. So you see, we're
Yeah.
starting to get some good color.
So you just turn them often to get every side.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to skip this process, you can throw them in the deep fryer. You can just throw them
Oven.
on a sheet pan and put them in the oven. You know, we're just trying to get some color. You know, probably 400 degrees is what we're looking for our if you're going to throw them in the oven. That's probably the easiest
So
thing
around
to do.
400, yeah.
Yeah.
Less mess.
Less mess. And so basically what we're doing here is, number one, we're trying to keep our shape. And you'll see that they're kind of getting, you know, one-sided or
Little
whatever.
wobbly.
Yeah, they're not going to be completely round. If you were going to do them in the oven, they would probably stay a little more round,
Consistent.
ball size.
Yeah.
Shape, you know. Okay. So we're getting some great color here.
All right.
Okay.
And you have some of them already made up earlier, right?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so we're going to transfer these guys.
All right.
These guys into our sauce here.
Okay.
There, we're getting good color. Yep. Good.
Smells delicious.
Right? I can.
As usual, Chef, you just blow me away.
Nutmeg and allspice in there.
Yeah.
Okay. Make sure we get good sear on all sides here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Look at that. You know, it seems like maybe a little bit of a time-consuming process, but actually it's not that bad.
Not that bad.
Not that
It
bad.
really isn't.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you could plate me up a bowl of mash, because we're ready to go, because I already made some earlier today.
Well, sure. I'll try to do a little bit better job than I did with the, what did I have?
rice.
That you, oh yeah, you remember, right? Yeah.
That's going to be on the blooper reels.
Oh yeah. I'll have a couple blooper reels, I'm sure. And you guys will enjoy it.
Okay. So you remember I said that hold off on your salt because, you know, after it reduces down, your salt level could be now too much.
Okay.
Oh, we're perfect.
Yeah, I think I tend to oversalt things.
Right, and it's
Yeah.
always easier to
Add more.
add more than try to fix all that.
So we're good on the spices, and
Oh, we're good on spices. I taste everything. Lots of pepper.
I know you reserved some of the beef stock and all that just in case.
Just in case.
We're good?
Yep.
All
Good
right.
with that. We don't need that.
Wow.
Everybody. Oh well, this, you know, you made too much sauce. Oh, you can never have too much of the sauce. I'll tell you what.
Can you freeze that sauce, Chef?
You could.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So a traditional thing to serve with it is lingonberry, but lingonberry is kind of hard to find. Another substitution is some red currant jam. Very, very, very traditional.
Okay.
And good.
Yeah,
There you go.
look at
There's
that
some
plate.
Meatballs, guys.
A little bit of
parsley for color.
Wow.
We're good to go.
Well, you get to enjoy that. Yeah.
Not keto friendly, but
All right.
it's still it's really
That's
delicious.
all right. Well, we'll throw it back to the guys in the studio to close out the show today.
All right.
I'm betting they were pretty dang good.
Yeah.
Hey, welcome back to Fish Out Northwest. We're kind of wrapping things up here. This is one of those things where I tell her to leave the window open. We'll crack the door here out in the studio and just wait for that smell to kind of make its way here because it's Chef Kelly. You can't go wrong. Right. The guy is just ridiculous in his ability. So venison Swedish meatballs. Can't wait to get on some of that when we are done here. Dave, you get the first serving. How's that sound?
I'm in.
Yeah, perfect. Let's change the narrative. Where are people going to go to find the information? Websites. Who do we need to contact? What's the next phase in the movement here?
So our website is www.hatchery-wild-coexist. Hatchery-wild-coexist.
Okay.
And our goal is to have a library of information there that's ready and easy for folks to read and digest, so they better understand this issue. Mm-hmm. We want people to be informed. We want them to understand. I mean, we've been living with this myth now for 20 to 30 years. It's time to get the real factual information out there. Yep. And some folks are going to agree. Some folks aren't going to agree. I mean, there is a tremendous amount of science out there.
Yep.
And, you know, for the average person to go through and wade through that, and decipher it and understand it,
yep,
it's an impossibility.
Right. It almost is as if this thing should be called broodstock and wild coexist. I only say that because, you know, the path it seems we need to be walking down here is we are going to like broodstock this river, broodstock this river, broodstock this river.
Yeah.
That is going to be the marching orders, I think, in the future. We find that in-basin broodstocking, as you said, 5 to 7 higher rate of return on these broodstock programs. So I hope people aren't getting confused when you say hatchery and wild coexist because it's, they're thinking, oh, these damn little 5-pound hatchery fish. This is not what we're talking. We're talking about bona fide, established broodstock programs and bringing these fish back within genetic strains that already exist in these systems.
Right.
Correct?
Yep.
So
producing the best hatchery fish that we can.
Yeah.
So they're actually helping and enhancing our wild populations and not having a negative impact.
What is the downside?
The downside to having a broodstock program?
Mm-hmm. What's the downside?
There is a downside.
There is a downside?
Yeah, there is a downside. So if we achieve our goal of having abundant and healthy fisheries, that's going to increase the number of anglers.
That is a downside.
But to mitigate for that, there's going to be greater opportunity. So more rivers are going to have healthy, robust fisheries. So there's going to be a variety of opportunities.
We're going to spread out the pressure. We're going to spread out the fleet. Right now, the hatchery programs that exist put a percentage of fish in a handful of rivers. The population explosion in the last 37 years in Washington State alone has gone from 3.2 million to 7.4 million. Okay? When you think there's dudes and ladies crawling all over your river and it seems crowded, you know why? It's because it is. And you're taking the masses and throwing them on to 2 or 3 rivers that we're only able to, budgetary-wise and whatever else, keep fish returning to. So everybody has to come down. Everybody has to go to this river to catch a Chinook in the fall. Everybody has to go to this river to catch a steelhead in the winter. All the stuff up north in the state of Washington, and you have your problematic areas in Oregon as well, and Idaho. But these systems are collapsing. There's no fish. The monies aren't there to reestablish them. They've failed miserably for years, so they just cut those programs. Now we have mass populations of folks impacting small individual river systems, whereas we need to reestablish broodstock programs, build them, get these fish runs returning in abundance, spread out the pressure, which is going to be better in the end result for our wild fish.
Yeah, and we're seeing that play out on the North Oregon coast. Right. So it started with the Wilson River. With the first broodstock program there, which has been a huge success. Then they moved to the Nestucca, Siletz, the Alsea, and so we're seeing this grow and expand, and it spreads the pressure.
Has there been any research done into how a broodstock program in conjunction to like the traditional hatchery raised fish, how that works out cost-wise, fish per fish? Is it cheaper to do broodstock? Is it more expensive to do broodstock?
That's a good question. and I don't know the exact numbers, but raising a fish in a hatchery, whether it's a domesticated fish or whether it's a wild fish, there's not going to be a significant difference in cost.
Right.
The fish that are being collected and used in these broodstock programs, for the most part, that's being done by volunteers. Right. So there's the transportation of taking that fish from the river to the hatchery facility. In some cases, the volunteers do that themselves, and the Stucca would be an example of that. But there are other examples, the Wilson, the Silettes, where you deposit those fish into a large tank or a trap facility in the river, and ODF and W folks have to come and pick them up and transport. So there's some associated costs there. But from a return standpoint, it's much more cost effective to raise those broodstock fish.
That's the key.
Yeah.
So, and Martin, you said earlier, your investment on your return. I mean,
and we also have situations where in some rivers, like the Willapa, for example, where those natural origin fish are actually a lot of times passing through the hatchery on their way up through, so that the broodstock program can be done on site at the hatchery, and you have zero transportation. And you can mix those genetics right there on site.
Yeah, good point.
So I mean, it's as like I've said in the past 2 or 3 shows, as we learn more and more about genetics and DNA, it's going to really affect our fisheries in the future.
Science. Modern day science.
There's a lot of changes that we can make that will really improve the situation.
Plug the website one more time.
Both for us and the fish. www.hatchery-wild-coexist.com. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We're doing the best we can to get information out there in bite-sized pieces on our Facebook page. So come join us.
Sounds like a plan.
I've also thrown a link up in the Facebook comments for the site too.
Oh,
so
perfect.
In the comments, scroll down, you'll find the link.
And
we'll make sure that's on YouTube also.
Okay.
So let me get the sticker thing before we run out of time, because fishermen love stickers.
Absolutely.
And so we have got good ones, and you can get them for free. So how about that? All you need to do is go to our website, again, hatchery-wild-coexist. And there's a section there where you can contact us. And it's intended, if you have questions, you need additional information. It's amazing the number of questions, the variety of questions. We've been contacted from folks in Pennsylvania, Ohio. It's amazing. But go to the Contact Us section. Under the subject line, put stickers or sticker. And then there's a message section. It's intended where you can ask your questions or whatever. So feel free to do that. But there you need to give us your address. Now I would say 1 out of 5 will put stickers and thank you with no address. So remember, we need the stickers in the subject line and your address in the message, and we'll get those out to you just as quick as we can.
Well, that's too easy. Can't thank you enough for coming in. Appreciate having this conversation.
You had me at meatballs.
Yeah, perfect. That's just that easy. I mean, when the chef's in the kitchen. Okay. Really?
Yeah.
Wow, what'd you do?
It just froze.
Oh, we blew up our system. All right, we're going to sign off from right here. Thanks for joining us this week. Big thanks to Dave Shamp. I hope it was educational for you as it was for us. We'll be we'll be back here next week. You got me all spun up here, IT. We'll be back here next week on Thursday, 6 to 8 p.m. on our YouTube channel, on our Facebook. Spend the week checking out both those locations, and we have a ton of information to bring you. So have a great week. Join us here next Thursday, 6 p.m. We'll see you then.